video is sponsored by Squarespace. It's end of July and we're finally starting into summer flowers here on the farm. Welcome to Red Roof Family Farm here in Kelowna, British Columbia, Canada. We're a Zone 5 and we grow cut flowers that we sell here at a roadside stand as well as down at our local farmers market. It hasn't been an easy year this year. We've been really struggling with the weather. We started off with really cold weather and then it transitioned to really hot weather, and I just wasn't prepared to properly take advantage of it. So because of that, some of my crops up to this point haven't looked the way I want them to look. But now that it's summer, things are starting to look really good. So I can't wait to show you all the summer blooms. Most of the tours that we've been doing so far this year have really focused on this area because perennials have been saving our butt. At this point though, the yarrow, it's pretty much done. You know, this area isn't so much of our focus. Our herbs that we use for greenery are coming into season now. And in here we have Russian tarragon, oregano, anise hyssop. This is a mountain mint. And these I don't like to pick until they have flowers on them. You know, the anise hyssop, you know, I pick it once it flowers. All these herbs I find once it sets flower, it's a lot more consistent for being hydrated when I cut it to use it in my bouquets. So I've been holding off on this so far, but this is gonna have me having greenery in my bouquets from now, you know, until fall. The flower in my perennial section that I'm absolutely loving right now is this perennial sunflower, which just has the most incredible texture. They're so happy, and I only ever have them for like 2 to 3 weeks every year, and we're in that window, so I'm feeling the love. This is I'm pretty sure it's called Sunny Days, maybe it's Happy Days is the name of this plant. And you know, there's 25 plants here, but it gives me so many stems. I really love it, and it's so neat to have this like perennial sunflower that just comes back every year. This area of the farm has been neglected for a little while, but it's planted with liatris, and liatris really, you know, does a good job of taking care of itself. I love the classic purple spike. These plants are very reliably perennial for us. They come back really, really easily. They are great, drought tolerant, low maintenance plants, and the spikes are really fun to use in the bouquets. They're like the perennial sunflower. I only kind of have them for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks if I'm lucky. You know, but it's fun to have them. And we are also into one of Ian's least favorite times on the farm. My oriental lilies are blooming and they smell incredible. I love the smell of them. I have stargazer planted here as well as Casablanca, and they pair really nicely. We basically have lilies here on the farm for, 6 weeks. Maybe even 7 weeks, because we have Asiatic lilies, unscented lilies, which bloom first. We've had them already now for a month, and as they finish off, my oriental lilies start. So the first one that blooms is a stargazer. When stargazer's done, Casablanca starts opening up. You know, we get a week of stargazer, a week of Casablanca, and it does really good. Lilies you can grow as a succession every year. You get the bulbs, you plant them, and then they bloom. But, you know, it's a little bit of a difficult system. It's a little bit of a cost to have to buy bulbs every year. By having a variety of things perennialized, we're able to get lilies without it really being much effort. You know, this bed hasn't been weeded in 2 years. They're really suffering because of it, but despite that, there's still lots blooming. This is another one of our newer perennial beds. The perennial beds that I started with have been planted now for 3 years, but this is on its 2nd year. And last year it didn't really do much, so I'm excited to see how well it's producing at this point. You know, we had some of this bee balm here that I've been picking for the last few weeks, which I use as a filler, but my perennial phlox has been incredible. I've been picking here maybe 2 weeks now already, and the phlox, it just keeps blooming and blooming and blooming. You know, at this point, you know, some of these white ones here, this is David, they're starting to look a little ratty, but it's because they still have dead flowers attached to it. If I remove these dead flowers off of it, there actually is still buds underneath. So I've been shocked at how long of a picking period I've been able to get off this, you know, and just the number of flowers and stems that I've been able to use. They work great as a secondary bloom, you know, but we've also been kind of using them as even a primary flower in our bouquet, you know, making something more cottagey and more, you know, romantic, wildflower, and they've been incredible. We also currently have my solidago or goldenrod blooming. We're very, very dry here in the Okanagan. We're so dry here that basically nothing grows without water. So, well, this is a flower that is, you know, a total ditchweed for a lot of areas. This is something that's really special for us here. And so when I put this into a bouquet, just this glowing haze of yellow adds so much to our flowers, and customers really respond to it. I know that depending on where you live, this might seem like there's weeds overgrowing our garden. But honestly, like Ian and I have been discussing getting more of this. I think we currently have 50 plants, and I could gladly, you know, have 100, 150. I really like this. So the perennial phlox, when I purchased it, I went through the catalog and I picked anything that was downy mildew resistant, because they do have problems here in our area. They don't like the dry heat. So they do eventually start to you know, get quite powdery mildewed and die back. So I picked anything that was resistant and I picked anything that was tall, but I didn't really spend much energy on bothering with what was what. David, the white one, I know by name. I really love it. But all the other ones, I don't know what they are. But this purple, like I love this. The color on this is incredible. And I wish I could share with you guys what the name of this is, but I would have to go way back into the records to find it, and I haven't done it yet. But this has been really fun to play with. What do you think, Ian?
That is a great color.
Is this the best one out of all of them?
Yeah, I do like that one. The phlox is great too because it smells so good. The smell sells a lot of their bouquets.
Yeah, we've been having them in the roadside stand, and like we walk in there and it's like, oh, it smells so good in here. In this perennial planting, we also have a bunch of Fama scabiosa in the white as well as the blue, and I've been really happy with these. These I planted last year. They produced fairly good in their first year, but they didn't quite produce enough for me to think that they were worth growing them as an annual, and someone told me that they don't really come back every single year. So I was really nervous, thinking like, oh, I planted it to be a perennial, I didn't plant it to be an annual. They came back super, super strong. They're producing twice as much this year as they did last year. And I now have more information recently. Recently I learned why some people have been telling me, yep, this is a perennial, it's great, and why other people have been telling me like, nope, this is gonna die out. These apparently last for about 3 years before they'll kind of fizzle out. And most people are saying that year 2 is their peak year, and year 3 they'll produce kind of similar to, maybe a bit better than year 1, but not as great as what I'm getting on them this year. So that's still manageable. I can work with that, but it means I need to get more planted. right? I'm gonna have this next year, but then it's gonna start disappearing on me. And I don't want to not have this beautiful flower in my life. It's very formal. It's formal in a way a lot of our other flowers aren't, you know, so I love being able to use it for selling to florists. Nothing says summer like sunflowers, and we're finally into the sunflowers. You know, I could have gotten them earlier. We were a little delayed on planting them, but you know, I've been using a lot of them for the past 3 weeks. I love it. The first one that blooms is the classic. It's you know, it's orange, and these are all pro-cut sunflowers, so they're a single stem, and you have to succession plant them. So this is the first one that blooms for me. It's orange, downy mildew resistant, pro-cut. But I plant out a mix. What I do is I mix all my seeds together and then I just plant it, you know, and then I pick them as they bloom. But after the orange, then I get the gold that blooms, which I love. I love the warm color on the center. And then we get the plum that blooms. And then just this week, the whites. So this is white night with the dark center, and then we also have white light with the white center, and I love these. People are always like, what is that? I've never seen a sunflower that looks like that before. Our customers really love the white sunflowers, so it's gonna be an exciting week of sunflower sales on the farm to have them back on the farm again. The way that I grow sunflowers on the farm is that every 2 weeks I plant more sunflowers. The reason why I plant them every 2 weeks is because I do a mix. If I was gonna grow only one variety, I'd wanna be planting every single week. So this is kind of my next succession. When my first bed of sunflowers are going to be finished, this is gonna start blooming, right? And it's gonna make it so that I always have sunflowers on hand, you know, and makes me happy. I look at this, I'm like, okay, I got flowers coming, it's gonna be good, I'm gonna be covered. The problem is I got distracted, I got really busy, and I didn't get my next succession of sunflowers. I should be able to come and show you like sunflowers that are this tall and be like, and then when this bed finishes, these will be ready. And I don't have that. And not having sunflowers in the summer can cause, you know, like serious sales problems for me on the farm. Sunflowers can be a very profitable crop because they're low labor and they're popular, right? So they sell lots, but they're not too hard for me to grow. So I have a solution, right? If you're like me, if you've missed a succession, here's a creative solution for you to try at your area for still getting sunflowers. This is my very first succession of sunflowers. I grew a tray of sunflowers. These bloomed, I don't know, like a month ago. These bloomed quite a while ago. Pro-cut sunflowers are not a branching sunflower. They send up, you know, like this. They send up one single stem, you cut it, and it's finished. They're not gonna send up side stems. That's not what you're supposed to do for growing them. But I have found that if you cut them and then you leave them in the ground, they actually do branch. I think maybe it's because I'm stressing them out so much. I don't know if this is unique to my area or if this is the case for everyone, but this has been fairly consistent for me. So you can see here, I did a very, very deep cut on the sunflower. You know, it was like this, I cut a big long stem, snapped it off, and then, you know, it was like just an empty stem. There didn't really seem to be anything going on there. But now, after all this time, it has sent up these side branches. And, you know, it's a fairly usable side branch. It's something that I can still pick and use in a bouquet. It's not gonna be these super long, high grade, good for selling to florists, type sunflowers, but they're going to be something that's going to be really useful for me to fill that gap in my bouquets. You can't eat the grass. It's not very good. It's good to rip out lawn and put in gardens. But what I've discovered since selling cut flowers is you can actually make a lot of money on grass. And so this is our grass bed. This is a decorative millet. We have like a green, this is limelight, and then we have a brown one. I can't off the top of my head remember the name of this variety, but these sell really well for me. We did an entire bed of it. This is a crazy amount of grass, you know, in hindsight.
But you did it with a cedar.
I did it with a cedar, so it was easy. I don't need this much grass, but I will cut this and dry it. It dries really well. And, you know, it's decadent to have lots of something. It's decadent to be like, oh, 1,000 stems? Sure, not a problem. I got lots of that. So I'm really happy. And the grass is like sunflowers. You really should succession plant it. But like the sunflowers, I have found that I can get kind of a second cut off of it, kind of like a second blooming about a month after my first pick. So I don't have more grass planted, but I will have grass all through the summer from just this single bed. One of the things that I really messed up on because of the weather was zinnias. Normally, I'd have zinnias that I could be picking at this point, but the weather was really cold, so I held off on planting my zinnias, and then it instantly got really hot, and because it was hot, I got overwhelmed, which then delayed when I planted my zinnias. And the outcome is that, you know, I have some blooming, starting to bloom. This is an entire bed of lime queen. This looks like an undeveloped lime queen red. But I'm still not going to be able to get zinnias off of this anytime soon. You know, this, I'm not going to get a usable stem. This is never going to be usable for me to use in bouquets. I could pick this and maybe put it in like a little tiny jar for myself in my house, but I'm probably still 2 weeks off from zinnias, which, you know, is really disappointing because ideally, you know, the other flower, the other one other than sunflowers that really says summer is the zinnias, and I would have loved to have them by now. This is a bit of a weedy mess, but what this is my Bells of Ireland that, you know, I've been keeping you guys updated on. These have not been growing the way they should be. I'm like squatted down. We're down by the ground. You know, Bells of Ireland are supposed to be really tall. They're supposed to, they really want to get established when it's cold out. They don't want to be growing in the heat. They're like a spring flower. They're not a August flower. But the thing that I discovered about Bells of Ireland this year, because I'm still learning how to grow them, is that they just don't stop. They just keep going. So, you know, here, let me pick one. The spike of bells, you know, they started this tall, and the top of it just keeps making more bells and getting taller and taller and taller. And so now we're finally at the point that these are tall enough that I can use them. You know, it's been a lesson in patience and in making lemonade out of lemons. But so what I've been doing is I've been picking them off. This one's all covered in dirt. So it was laying on the ground. But I've been picking them off and then stripping off all the bells that, you know, are kind of bloomed out and starting to discolor, and then just leaving the tip. And so I've been using these now for a week and a half, and I love them. I'm in love. I need to figure out how to grow these better. And you know, I'm really surprised. I think that I'm going to be able to salvage somewhat of a harvest off of this bed when, you know, for the last, you know, I've been watching this for what, like, I don't know, like 4 months now. I planted these in March. You know, I've been really shocked that it's done anything at all. So it's been a good lesson for me to, you know, never give up hope. This is an entire bed of lisianthus that is a complete crop failure. But despite that, it looks like the most incredible little fairy garden you've ever seen. These were the lisianthus that I potted up into 72 trays when I got in my plugs. These I potted up with the plan that I was going to try to sell a bunch of them once they grew out a little bit. And then I decided, you know what, maybe I'm gonna plant even more lisianthus. These plants, when I planted them, looked really, really strong. They looked really happy and really healthy. But I think that they were actually root bound. So they're very short, right? There's like, you know, this is like, this one here is 14 inches. You know, from the ground. That's not super useful. I've been letting them bloom their first flower, and then, you know, I'm gonna let that finish and then deadhead it, and then that's gonna give just a little bit more height for when some of these top buds bloom. And I've been using them in jar arrangements. Like, I've been having a purpose for these somewhat, but they're, you know, they're supposed to be like this. They're not supposed to look like this. Lisianthus is really hard. And so, you know, I'm willing to give myself a few more years still to get it perfected. I've learned a really valuable lesson from this bed. I've learned how important it is to not let it get root bound. So even though this represents, you know, an investment in actual money in buying plugs that, you know, I'm only somewhat gonna salvage in sales, you know, I'm gonna take that lesson and I'm gonna move forward growing them better in the future. And I mean, look, like, it's cute, it's pretty, I like it. And since it's summer, it's finally time for a status update, which is how my status is growing. I love status. It's incredible in bouquets fresh. It dries incredibly. It comes in so many amazing colors. Last year we went, you know, pretty aggressively on the status. We put in 2 full beds and I was like, let's do that again. That was a good idea. We actually have almost 3 full beds of status. There's 2 full beds here, and then I had so much that I had to plant it in another spot further down the farm. And I have every single color, and it was really sad. These were very, very root bound plugs because I was waiting for the weather to warm up. Status likes to get established in the cool temperatures, but you know, like, we get winter here. We are zone 5, so planting it out in the field, I kind of had to wait until we weren't experiencing freezing nights. It's one thing to plant out status when we're still getting some frosts. It's another thing when every night is getting down to -5, and that's kind of what we struggled with, you know, this early spring. But they've bounced back. They're starting to bloom. I've done my first pick on this week. You know, I'm finally getting stems that are long enough to be able to use in some of my bouquets. You know, this color that I'm in front of, this is one of the last to bloom. This is apricot. It has this amazing mix. It can have these like soft yellows to these like rose tones to like a more true apricot tone. You know, I really like this specific coloring. Yeah, and they're finally getting there. The problem though is having 3 beds. There's like, I could spend 25 hours a week picking status. There's so much status in here. So I really need to be on the ball and get in here and pick some. But let's show you all the colors first. Here we have the rose. This I love. This so far has been the tallest out of all the colors. One of the earliest to bloom and the tallest, and it has really strong stems. So, you know, the rose I've been really happy with. Over here on this side, I have the purple. And like, you can see how warm the color is when I put it beside the rose. This, I didn't grow this last year, but I really like this. You know, I found that it's been working really good in the bouquets. Over here is blue, dark blue. These are plugs that we actually bought from Ball. They came and they were beautiful. I can not grow status plugs as nicely as what these were, but then they didn't get planted out. So then they got root bound. I'm pretty shocked at this point to see, you know, the side-by-side comparison of what I grew versus how beautiful these plugs are. It kind of really is teaching me how resilient status is, how much it can bounce back from being these ugly little tiny soil blocks that, you know, I didn't take care of properly versus these nicer plugs. You know, at this point, these have more stems on the plant. But they're blooming at a similar time and the height is pretty similar. So, you know, I'm willing to try buying status plugs again, but you know, it gives me confidence on my bad seedling growing. Yellow may not be for everyone, but every color of status is for me. So this is our yellow, and it's bright. I love mixing all the status together. They're all so vibrant that when you put them side by side, they pop so much. And so even though this isn't like necessarily, you know, something that anyone doing bridal bouquets would ever use, I love having the yellow on the farm. Over here we have light blue. And if I only grew this, I'd be like, yeah, that's blue, like light blue, I don't know. But if you put it beside the dark blue, you know, you can really see the differences. You know, I really like the tone on this. Like right here, you can see there's some purple blended in, right? So this is purple, this is light blue. They're quite distinct, even though, you know, if I was to do side by side, I'd be like, oh, well, this is just purple. You know, it's been really fun for me to see the different tones. You know, we didn't grow this one last year either. And then finally, the last color of status I have is the white. And, you know, it's probably been the latest to produce, but even though it's delayed, you know, I haven't really done a pick at all on this yet. At this point, it's starting to have some of the tallest stems. It's actually looking like it's going to produce some really good usable stems for me. And then mixed in, we have a few more dried flower type options. This is amobium, and this really needs to get picked. It should still have yellow centers. Some of these are getting a little bit mature. But yeah, these I'm happy with. Like, these have a really good stem length. These bloomed really early. This is another one that I could really use some work growing better plugs. These were sad little pathetic plugs like the status, and I think, you know, putting effort in to having those better plugs to go into the ground is just going to lead to more success, earlier blooms on this type of stuff for me. So the winged everlasting is on my like forever list probably at this point. And then finally I have my paper daisies in here. And these I grew last year, and they're too difficult. The stems never really got tall enough. They were really flimsy and really fussy to pick. So I decided that these are not going to be picked for cut flowers. These I'm growing purely just to get the flower head, right? So I have done a couple picks on these, and I've just come through and snipped everything off. You can kind of see some of the empty stems here, and they're producing really good. I haven't seen them slow down from leaving the stems. I haven't felt the need to kind of deadhead further down, but we'll see how it goes. Ideally, these would produce all season, and, you know, out of this kind of 50 plant patch, give me, you know, 1,000. But we'll see. Though I don't know, I guess looking at these plants, I'm like, 1,000's pretty reasonable, because there's definitely more than 20 right there. You know, and 20 times 50 is 1,000. Maybe I want 5,000. Maybe they each have to produce 100 flowers. Another summer favorite for us here on the farm is tall, big marigolds. And we're gonna start picking off of these in about a week. This is cocoa yellow, and I'm loving it. Cocoa gold we grew last year and the year before, and it was our favorite by far. We loved it so much. Previously, we had gotten our marigolds from Johnny's Seeds. They only sold cocoa gold. And I was like, you know what? If they have cocoa gold probably means it comes in other colors too. Johnny's just doesn't carry it. So I searched, and this year we have yellow, we have orange, and we have gold, and I'm really excited. So far, yellow is blooming first, whereas before cocoa gold bloomed way earlier than any of our other varieties. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of like timing. You know, the earlier I can get marigolds, the happier I am. I love these. I'd gladly put these in every bouquet. And I know a lot of our customers, they say they don't like marigolds, but when I put these marigolds in bouquets, they gravitate to those bouquets. So don't be nervous to, not appreciate marigolds just because other types of marigolds get a bad rap. You just haven't grown the cocoa ones yet. Down on this end of the marigold bed, we have Zoshi. This is supposed to be the biggest, most decadent, most beautiful marigold blooms you've ever seen. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see them for myself. I don't always grow the best, most high standard flowers. So I know how big I'm gonna get the flowers isn't gonna be a representative of how big, other people in more perfectly adapted growing conditions are gonna get them. But I'm excited to do the side-by-side comparison of the Zoshi and the cocoa. And like already the color's really gorgeous. Orange, I love it. I have another summer favorite finally coming into production. I've started to do my first pick. And I'll be picking off this bed for a month now, I'm sure. This is cinnamon basil. This is Arameadow specifically, and I love this for greenery. Basil greenery, I don't pick it until it flowers. Once it has the flowers, then I find it holds up really well. It has really good vase life. Before that point, sometimes they can go limp and they can wilt on you. But as long as you get them with the flowers, you're good to go. And I love the smell on this. It smells incredible on bouquet making day because that's why I'm like playing with it right now. The more you touch it, the more the scent gets released. And I really like the dark, dramatic coloring to it. It plays up really well with, like these darker blues. It's really fun to do this with them together, put in some burgundies, make some dramatic jewel tone bouquets. I used to grow a lemon basil too, but I found that I just didn't like the looks of it as much as other greeneries. Now those herbs that I showed at the very beginning, those are kind of my go-to, but the drama of this can't be beat. And then over on this side, we have a new flower for me that I thought for sure was gonna be a failure. They were this big for months and months and months. They were not growing at all. This is floss flower. I was like, you know what? There's no world this is ever gonna get tall enough for me to be able to cut and have a usable stem. And then, like magic, I woke up one day and whoof, it had gotten tall. So now at this point, it is, it's really starting to bloom. I used this for the first time last week in bouquets, and it's love. I'm in love with this. I want this in every bouquet from now on. Marigolds and this and all the other good stuff. This is gonna be summer for me from now until forever. And I still think that I didn't grow it that well. I still think that there's a good chance that I can get this even taller, even happier, even healthier in future years. So, have yet again, right? Like the Bells of Ireland, seeing something that I thought was a complete loss and having it turn into something like usable and maybe even somewhat of a success, just it's summer love here at the farm, guys. The lisianthus in the tunnel, it's doing better than the ones in the field, but it's pretty short. It's pretty not what it should be. Last year we had success on the lisianthus, but they were short too. And, I thought that I had learned what I needed to do to get them to grow taller. And then I was given like a 180 set of weather conditions this year. And, you know, I just didn't know what to do to make them happy. You know, it was a whole new year of learning. We spent a lot of money on lisianthus. I can't remember off the top of my head, and it's a little depressing when I see these little minis. So I'm not super quick to go back and figure out how many thousands of dollars we actually did spend. But you know, I'm feeling set up to do things successfully next year. I have 2 sets of problems to keep an eye out for. You know, and there's lessons that I definitely learned that are a success this year. We planted the lisianthus twice as close this year, and they are starting to fall over, but they're not falling over as much as they did last year, and they've been a lot easier to take care of in regards to weeding and everything. So, you know, good lesson learned there. One of the bad lessons I'm learning this year is that having every single color is amazing. We bought every color of the ABC lisianthus, and none of them are duds. So it's going to be hard to narrow in the list in future years. I mean, they're gorgeous. They're so beautiful. We've been bringing in a lot of them because we have short arrangements in the house quite often. They're the size of arrangements that, you know, I kind of personally enjoy the most because there's something you can, you know, tuck into a windowsill or on the bathroom counter, you know, all those spots that you don't normally put flowers, but it is very fun and decadent to have them.
You just made one in your favorite cow vase.
I know. The cow vase is going to be filled up with lisianthus from now until, you know, the end of summer. Okay, but let's go over the colors. Okay, so we have purple. And then in the back, right, I think that's the lighter ones are purple, and then the other ones are blue in the ABC. And then this is, this here is blue rim, and then this is misty blue, you know, and okay, if we're gonna narrow it down, the blue rim is cool, right? That's fun. But oh my god, the romance of these misty blues. If I had to pick, I'm going for misty. But let me know down in the comments, what do you guys think? Rim or misty? I have them coming in pink too. So, you know, soon I'll get to see the comparison there. These are pathetically short here. But this is maybe my favorite out of all the lisianthus. This is the one that I'm like, maybe we just need an entire farm of just this. This is Little Summer Orange. And they're these like, they look like these tiny little spray roses. And so the color name is orange. But oh my god, it's like the most perfect pink in the entire world. It has like the dark pink tones, right? If you wanted to like make it in a dramatic bouquet, you know, you could put this with like burgundies, right? Like really play it up. If you wanted to put this with like pinks and whites, it'd just be like the most feminine pink ever. You totally could like pull out the apricot tones in this. This one is so versatile. You know, I am, as I'm looking at these, thinking like, well, what am I gonna want for next year? What is it that I'm gonna, you know, want to use? You know, am I going to want to be trying to do events and weddings and things like that? And, you know, the answer has mostly been no up until this point. But when I see these, I'm like, I don't know, maybe I do weddings. And what I do is I'm the person who uses Little Summer Orange lisianthus, and you come to me because they're so gorgeous that that's just all you want. Could you imagine? It'd be so decadent. An entire wedding that's just like 1,000 of those. We're doing something really weird in the center of this greenhouse, and I've talked about it before, but update. we planted these dahlias like a couple weeks ago. We planted these so late. We got in our dahlia tubers and we stuck them in the fridge, and the plan was, like, we're not trying to have dahlias for the summer. My dahlias have really struggled. They've gotten eaten by grasshoppers, which have caused diseases. They've been sad about the heat. And I'm like, no more. Let's see if we can do fall dahlias. Right, for the summer, we have these lisianthus, we have sunflowers, we have so many focal flower options, but it would be really nice to have a fall focal flower option. And so that's what I want these for. So they're planted now, they started growing, they're looking very happy, very healthy. Yeah, and like a month of summer heat, totally. I can imagine that these, September, gonna be producing really strong for me. Close up the tunnel. Dahlias are really frost sensitive, but being in a tunnel, now we can pick off of them even when there's frosts that are maybe killing them on other people's farms where they're field grown. And then we'll have them available, into October. We'll see. The status is going hard, and the other thing that we love, in the same way we love status, is straw flowers. And like status, these were the saddest, most pathetic seedlings you'd ever seen, but we got them in and they've bounced back. Yay. And like status, I was gonna plant 2 beds, but I had too many, so I planted 3 beds, so I now have 1 million. We are not going to necessarily be growing these and picking these for stems, for bouquets. We love them. If I need something, they'll be here. I could come out and I could pick stems, but the plan is to mostly pick off the flower heads. The plan is mostly to come, just snip off this and then have them available for using in projects. Right? One of the things that I found last year, we did the Christmas ornaments. What I really needed was smaller heads on the straw flowers. But when I was cutting them for stems, it's kind of these like secondary flowers on the stem that produces those smaller flower heads. And because I was cutting them, to make a nice stem, they never really produced very many of the small flower heads. They were more limited. So I think this way it's gonna give me lots and lots. I'll have some of these bigger ones that I can sell for crafting, I could have these for other projects. And so these, 3 beds here, this could end up being really strong winter sales for me, right? So I'm growing them now in the summer, but they might lead to money that I can bring in on the farm in those months when all the other flowers are kind of done and we normally wouldn't see any cash flow. Here we have an experiment that I was very confident about, but I was starting to get nervous, especially because, I'm 2,000 glads deep into it. We have been planting glads in crates in succession. So every 2 weeks we plant up, another 300 glads, and the plan was that, we'll have glads available all year long, but they're kind of very easy to manage in these crates. Glads are not perennial here for us. They don't survive over the winter, so we have to grow them as annuals anyways. Crates work so great for tulips. Why not for glads? So we've been waiting. We've been waiting and waiting and waiting. I'd been like, okay, 75 days. That's usually how long glads take. Why don't we have any glad blooms yet? And yesterday they finally started, and it's been hot. We've been having a heat wave. And so, they're developing really fast. I'm like, okay, I got work when we stop filming this. But we have glads. Oh, makes me very happy. So this, I'll be picking off of this for the next 2 weeks. This is a mix. This is a whole variety of colors that are in these crates, right? And so same as like our mix of the sunflowers, they bloom across 2 week succession. And sunflowers, glads, they should bloom across kind of like a 1 month, right? So those crates, and then we get into here, these will start blooming kind of 2 weeks after those ones. Here we got, a month from now, these will be blooming. We're a little unorganized, but then down here, this is gonna be a month and a half from now, these will be blooming. And then I have one more succession that I need to plant tomorrow. And we should have glads until, you know, until the freeze comes. I'm very happy and I'm very excited. And it's gonna be so easy to clean this up when they finish. When we finally do have zinnias, we're gonna have lots of zinnias. I showed you my bed of lime queen. I have an entire 400 plants of lime queen. And then here behind me, there's 3 entire beds. So this is 1,200 plants of, you know, all my Bennery's giant varieties. But like the lime queen, you know, we're still 2 weeks off until we're gonna have any. Do better next year, Serena. But the final summer flower, when I think summer, you know, you think those zinnias, you think the sunflowers, and the thing that pairs so perfectly with them is cosmos. These are finally starting. We've been picking some of our first cuts on the cosmos over the last week. These are still a pretty decent, manageable height. We're not drowning in cosmos yet, but by the time the zinnias bloom, the cosmos, they're gonna be up here. I'm gonna be complaining about them. The next time we do one of these farm tours, I'm gonna be telling you how much I hate cosmos. But we're still in the honeymoon period right now.
This year you left the big gap here.
I know, I was like, this is gonna make me not dislike cosmos a little bit more this year, in theory. We'll see. Ask me like September 10th what my opinion of cosmos is. Then we'll see. And then last but not least, let me know down in the comments if you made it all the way to this part of the video. We have the food that we're growing on the farm this year, which is, we failed at planting food. We were too focused on getting our flowers in, and the only food that we have is tomatoes, but they're ready. We've started having cherry tomatoes, and this bed, you know, we have an entire bed. This holds 100 cherry tomato plants. This is just for me. This isn't for selling. We're not necessarily going to be selling cherry tomatoes. This is just, we didn't have any tomatoes. We're tomato-based life forms, and we didn't have any tomatoes grown here last year, so we need to make up for it and grow enough that we can, you know, we can bathe in them. We'll just fill the bathtub and be like, oh, it's so nice to have a decadent amount of tomatoes again. Summer is my favorite time of year. I always say you can complain about one. You can complain about the hot, or you can complain about the cold. And since I complain about the cold, then no complaints from me ever about summer. And since, you know, the farm has become a flower farm instead of, you know, veggies and flowers like what we've started with, you know, there's been these kind of milestone moments that have adjusted for me. Before, you know, summer began with the first cucumber and the first tomato, and it was like, this is what summer tastes like. And now that we're a flower farm, you know, it's kind of seeing those first sunflowers, it's seeing the zinnias finally start to bloom, the cosmos, you know, go from being these tiny little plants into these hedges. You know, summer on the farm is so abundant. There's so much color, there's so much life, there's so much beauty. And, you know, I'm just, at this point, I'm still just soaking it in. You know, there's no overwhelm yet. There's just pure joy and pure appreciation. So I hope that you guys enjoyed getting to see those summer blooms starting too. And, you know, it's just still gonna get more exciting. You know, it doesn't stop being fun on the flower farm until, you know, the cold weather comes and rains on my parade. One final thing that I thought you guys might want to see is how great all these like flower heads look. They've been in my super hot garage drying. And you know, this is it. This is them dry. This is how good they look. These are going to become product that will be able to sell online. One of the things about selling flowers is that they're a perishable product. They don't really ship very well. They don't really, lend themselves to building an online business, but stuff like this does. And so that's why we really appreciate Squarespace. We are not very good at techie type stuff. And using a Squarespace website makes things so easy that I can be excited about selling these over the winter, not nervous. Squarespace is the ultimate platform for creating your dream website. With flexible business templates, you can start with professional design that fits your category and customize it to match your unique style. Be it a professional blog, a portfolio, or a business website, Squarespace ensures your online presence stands out on every device. But it's not just about being seen. It's a great way to sell. Whether you're selling physical, digital, or service products, Squarespace provides you with the tools you need to launch your online store effortlessly. From inventory management to secure payment processing, Squarespace has got you covered. And if, like me, you also sell in person, Squarespace offers point-of-sale integration. Connect a Square Reader to the Squarespace app and sync your orders, inventory, and customer data with your online store, making it easy to carry your business anywhere. Go to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/youcaneatthegrass to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.